Listen up, chat. We're gonna do something different today, okay? I'm actually experimenting with a new editor. Shout out to Tanks, all right? Let's see how well Tanks edits this bad boy. I wanna have a conversation with you guys about Chapter 5, Season 3. And I also wanna talk about like the loot pool and some comments that I've seen from people regarding how terrible this loot pool is. But more specifically, I really wanna I can't talk. I really want to get into the meat of why Epic Games will not split the loot pools, because I think that's the real underlying issue here. But before we get into that, I want to just talk about kind of the loot pool in general. And I really don't feel like I've talked about my thought process specifically with all of this a lot. You hear me talk about it with Dag and JoJo and Clint on Tuesdays, but this was kind of my general perception when everything happened. Season dropped. I was very excited. I was just like, wow, this feels so good. Loot and I played the day of the new season. We were having fun. I was like, the cars feel different, but it felt really good. I like the fist. I just thought everything felt really good. All the weapons felt good. It just felt really fun. You have to understand, like, from the content creator standpoint, because I've talked about the casual and the comp side, but there's a third side that we don't talk about, which is the content creator perspective. When I started playing this season, I was like, man, there is so much content that we can make this season because these items are just so good. And it was so exciting. I played, Loot played, we're both having a blast. I end stream and I'm thinking, man, the community's gotta love this. Compared to the last 2 seasons, this feels like Fortnite. I go on Twitter. I get a message from Loot. Loot's like, bro, Ninja is not happy about this season. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no way. Start seeing clips of Ninja upset. He's mad at the season. Okay, fine. It's Ninja being Ninja. We get it. We expect it. Then I start seeing all these angry comments from people on Twitter and in my comment section. And I'm like, yo, what is going on right now? I'll be honest, it wasn't because the season came out, what, on a Friday? I honestly don't think it was until the following Monday that I realized how bad it was. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a damn civil war between what seemed like competitives and casuals. Now, when we say that, that doesn't mean that there weren't some casual players that didn't like this season, and it doesn't mean that there aren't some competitive players that do like this season, right? But generally speaking, it's pretty clear that if you're a casual player, you fit into one category, and if you're a competitive player, you fit into another category, generally speaking. It was easy to see that there was a clear line that was being set in the center. It doesn't mean that there weren't other people that fit either of those categories. I brought Rylick on. I talked to Rylick because I wanted to understand more of the position of the competitive players and why they are frustrated. I also understand that I'm ignorant. When I look at video games, I don't look at it from the same standpoint as even probably most of you, because a lot of my life was not spent playing video games. I don't truly understand what always makes something competitive. I don't understand why, if every pro player has access to the same items, why can't it be competitive? I think now, after talking with competitive players, playing against cliques, and also having a certain amount of experiences on my own this season, I understand why this is an issue competitively. Mr. JOI also made a really good video talking about, even from the standpoint of a casual, why this season would be a turnoff for a lot of people, because there is a certain element of competitiveness that's just lacking, because there is a lot of situations where there's nothing you can do. However, here's my counterpoint, and this is what I think people need to understand and what people need to think about, right? We all understand that a lot of this issue comes down to builds, right? Generally speaking, if you're a builds player, this is going to be more of an issue for you than it is going to be for a zero builds player, because this season completely, at least at the beginning, it made builds completely useless. And that was something that I agreed with the competitive players on, is that you should not introduce mechanics that make the core mechanic of your game, the mechanic that made your game popular, the thing that people have been grinding for or practicing for years. You should not introduce anything that compromises that mechanic and makes it almost useless or makes it drastically less effective, right? The problem that these items had, it wasn't that the items were bad, but they were unbalanced. Now, this is something I want everybody to think about. Can you name a single Fortnite season where the weapons initially that are introduced, like the new weapons at the start of the season, the new items, whatever they are, can you think of a Fortnite season where within the first couple of weeks there isn't some kind of balance or nerf? Every single Fortnite season that I can think of since I started playing this game, going all the way back to Chapter 1, Season 1, there's been some kind of nerf somewhere. I think that's the other reason why I was so shocked to see everybody so mad, because dude, the season has been out for 2 days, 3 days, and people are already losing their minds. Can we already know Epic's gonna nerf it. We do this every season. The example that came to my mind was, I remember when the katanas came out in Chapter 4, Season 2, and how effective they were in the beginning just as a melee weapon. And then after the nerf, I'm like, I'm not gonna use this for melee, but then I started seeing pro players use them for a rotation, exclusively for a rotation. I was like, oh, this is very vital. This is vital to the meta this season in terms of being able to play the game effectively. And so We all kept katanas in our inventory. We didn't use them for melee, but we used them for rotation. It's the reason why I bring this up is I kind of find it funny how people are upset about certain items, specifically the Doomfist, right? They're like, oh, well, now the Doomfists aren't they're not effective as melee weapons. They're only good for rotation now. That's also not the first time this has happened. Anyway, all this being said, I've gotten so many comments from so many different people over the last month. People that really love my content and really love the message I've been trying to put out and trying to keep people balanced in this. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I've had people call me everything but a child of God. If you're going to be a content creator in this space, it comes with the territory. You just deal with it, right? It's fine. Here's the thing I want everybody to understand. Fortnite is always nerfing something. I think that these nerfs needed to happen. I think it was very important that these items did get nerfed in the way that they did. And as someone who enjoyed this season from the start, from my perspective, I enjoy it more now that the items are nerfed. And also want to make it clear, even though I'm primarily a zero builds player, and that's what I enjoy the most now, I still play a good mix of builds and zero builds. Tuesdays is pretty much exclusively builds because that's what my friends play. I'm still enjoying it in both modes. Both modes are fun, and from my perspective, this season has not gotten boring. If anything, it's gotten better, and it's because of the nerfs. And the reason, in my opinion, why that is because you don't want items to exist in the game that don't require any skill or any kind of strategy to use. The cars, to be fair, were too busted. Having cars with infinite regenerating health is not a good idea. Having cars that had the amount of health that they did was not a good idea. Having the fist be able to break through people's builds and knock them back to the way they had it was not a good idea. Having the explosive bow be able to do as much damage as it did to builds was not a good idea. Some people were upset about the boogie bombs. I think boogie bombs, until they could redesign the EMP grenades, I think that was a great thing to introduce into the game. All of these things, once they were nerfed and adjusted, it made the game more strategic. So is it still mindless fun of you and your buddies using cars and ramming into people and all that? Absolutely yes. But now I have to think a little bit more when I'm using a car. My car does not have as much health. If my car explodes while I'm in this sucker, I'm going to be in a really difficult position because if that person over there that blew up my car with me in it has a combat shotgun, I'm probably dead, right? Or I could get third party by another team that has a car. On the other end of the spectrum, from the competitive side, I'm hearing a lot of people say that this is just Car Royale. This should not be in Fortnite. This is not a Fortnite meta. There's no gunplay involved in this, and that is objectively not true either. I have had a few discussions with people in my comment section about this as well. I understand that I'm not the best player in the world. I understand that my lobbies might not be the best. However, what I never see anybody explaining to me or showing me are these people that give me those criticism, generally speaking, I don't see you showing me what your lobbies look like, number one. And number two, I don't get there's no baseline standard for how sweaty a lobby needs to be in order for my opinion to not be justified or for my argument not to be justified. There's no logical baseline because I've been in some lobbies where there have been some really good players and they were building. I'll put it this way. My experience playing this season has not been a situation where it's only people using cars and it's a bunch of cars at endgame. For the first couple of days, maybe it was like that because the cars were new and everybody was experimenting and trying them out. Another thing I realized early on, and what I'm surprised other people didn't see, maybe they didn't see because they were just too upset, but another thing I realized is that people would get bored of just using cars exclusively as the season progressed. 2 weeks in, people are still using cars. Cars are still the meta, but people are jumping out of cars to get into fights too. You see a good mix of people in and out of cars, and I think for me, that's what makes this season fun. Yes, is it a car meta? Is it super heavy focus on cars? Absolutely, because that's the theme of this season. However, it doesn't feel any less like Fortnite to me. And I understand that my experience is not going to be the same as other people's experience. When I see other people that are better than me play this game, I'm noticing a mixture of play styles in their fights too. I'm not seeing people exclusively use cars. I'm not seeing people only getting their boxes broken into with nitro. I'm seeing a good mix of gunplay and vehicle play, which I think has been really well done this season. And that, to me, is fun. It's balanced. It's what Fortnite is about, man. I think my biggest thing is this, and what I want the community to understand, most importantly. The reason why I'm so passionate about this topic, and what I want every single person, regardless of how you feel about the season, what I want you to understand is this. We always want to give epic criticism for things that we don't like. but we need to do it in a way that's constructive and respectful. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to have Epic be like, well, I mean, we did add cars that one time, and because of that, yeah, man, I don't think we should do a season where we only have laser weapons and just completely flip the loot pool on its head, because people just don't like these changes. I don't think we should experiment as much because people just don't like it. The player base just doesn't like it. I think there's a healthy balance of constructive criticism while also appreciating what you have, even if you don't like it, like showing Epic Games a bit of gratitude, which is the reason why I said this season should not be an LTM. There's way too much content for this game to be an LTM this season. It needed to be the entire season's theme, and it needed to infiltrate pubs. However, where I think Epic Games is dropping the ball, and this is pretty much where all of us agree, is that this game needs split loot pools between competitive and pubs, plain and simple. And I'm going to be completely transparent with everybody listening. I did not want that. Let me tell you a little story. Back when I was playing competitive Fortnite somewhat religiously, you could say, when I was playing it every day with my cousin, we were doing like 1 to 2 tournaments a week, maybe 3 tournaments a week. But the issue that I had and my cousin had was that sometimes the loot pool just felt really dry. It was not fun to play competitive when pubs had so many cool, fun items that you got to play with, and you couldn't use those in competitive. At the time, we didn't have anything as broken as the card. I liked it when ranked got announced, when we moved from arena to ranked and the loot pools were going to be closer together. I liked that because it made the experience more consistent. However, what I don't like is that there were a lot of elements that existed in competitive Fortnite that did not get carried over into ranked. For example, the biggest one, and I think it's the most egregious thing that Fortnite has ever done, was remove Siphon from competitive. It makes, even in tournaments, it makes no sense to me that in 2024, in an era where the average Fortnite player is cracked out of their mind, why Siphon does not exist in competitive playlists. It is damn near impossible to survive 3rd, 4th, and 5th parties, which are common when you're playing at the highest levels in competitive Fortnite. You really have to have like the greatest situational awareness in order to make it any significant amount of time in competitive playlists in Fortnite right now, because it's too risky. Third parties, you being a player third partying is far too risky because there's no reward for it. So you might as well sit back and camp it out. Personally, I think Fortnite is at its most fun when players are aggressive. This goes for pubs and competitive. When you incentivize people to push fights, and that incentive is Siphon, it just makes the experience of Fortnite overall so fun, which is why Chapter 1 Season 7 is one of my favorite times to play Fortnite ever to this day, because the loot pool was good and the meta was good. Mats and health on kill was so much fun. And when you played arena, that was the saving grace. Even though the loot pool was pretty dry, I enjoyed playing competitive for the sake that I got Siphon, and it felt rewarding. Even if the weapons were bland, it felt rewarding to get kills. And as JoJo eloquently pointed out last week when he was on stream, JoJo said that when you played arena, it felt like a different version of Fortnite. It felt like a different experience because it was a different loot pool. It was a more basic loot pool. For competitive, it does make sense. I do, even though that's not personally what I like, I think it does make sense. I'm still 50-50 on it. I understand why from a competitive standpoint, more so now, like why you wouldn't have certain things. I'll give you a couple of examples of items that wouldn't be in competitive that I feel would make sense. Shockwaves, for example, right? Or fire bows, right? This is what Fortnite is. This is what this video game is. At its inception, this is what it was, right? This is how the game was. And if this is how people design the game, why would we not include those in competitive? I guess it's because you could argue that there's no skill involved in using those items. Here's my thing. I just don't know how true that is. It's something I haven't thought through. I really do feel like certain items that are goofier could exist because that's just what this video game is. I gave the analogy to Rylock, and I don't know how good this analogy is, but it's like playing a Dragon Ball Z video game and being upset that someone uses Goku and he has instant transmission, and because you're using Frieza, you don't have that move, and that move is too broken because you can instantly teleport behind somebody. So it's just not fair, but it's just like, well, that's just what this character can do, and it's what this game does. Just counter it. Just counter. Like I don't know. I don't get it. As long as there are counters that exist, or there are ways in which you can play where you can avoid certain things, I just feel like that's fair. The cars, I can understand why you wouldn't, because a bunch of people in game with cars, it isn't competitive. Like, there's not enough of a skill gap there in order to make cars effective and competitive, I feel like. But the rest of the items, if they're balanced out, I do feel like they would be good. The point to all of this, and this is the ultimate conclusion, why does Epic Games not split the loot pool? Because it seems like the most obvious solution, right? Why is Epic Games keeping the loot pool the way that it is? Ultimately, I think the big reason why Epic refuses to split the loot pool is because they want more people to get invested into competitive Fortnite. And in order to do that, there needs to be an easier bridge between casual Fortnite and competitive. That meaning the loot pools need to be more similar. There were times when I didn't feel like playing competitive, even as a more casual competitive player, I didn't feel like playing competitive Fortnite because the loot pools were just so different. And then there were some times where I did, and I just tucked it on, like, look, I just got to realize if I want to play at this level, or if I want to play or be effective in these tournaments, I have to play with a loot pool that is watered down. And look, to be fair, even then I still had fun. But from Epic's standpoint, they want to make sure that more people can kind of, I don't know, easily get into the competitive scene. And then when you play the tournament, that's crunch time. That's where you're not going to have a lot of the items. And that's where the pro players are frustrated, because it's like you can't properly practice for a tournament because it's just the loot pools are just too different. I honestly think eventually at some point in time, Epic will end up splitting the loot pools, but you have to look at it from a business decision. If Epic is so set on having the loot pools be the same between pubs and competitive, what that tells me is that they don't have enough confidence in the loyal competitive player base to separate the pools, because they want all those casual people or more casual players that are more in the middle like me. They want more of an incentive for those people to come over to competitive to expand their competitive player base. I guess Epic Games didn't feel like there were enough competitive players, or maybe competitive wasn't interesting enough from a business standpoint of attracting people to getting into the competitive scene. Epic puts a lot of money in competitive Fortnite. Competitive is essential to Fortnite surviving as a game. Even though there are more casual players than there are competitive players, we need each other. Competitive is a great way to advertise your game, to advertise your season, to allow your most hardcore fans and player base a really good way to showcase their talents and skills that they've spent investing into your game over the last X amount of years. But at the same time, I would argue that casual players probably spend more. Do you honestly think that competitive players give a shit about the Foundation or Midas or any of the storyline characters? If you want proof of that, look at the game that me, Cyan, Rylick, and JoJo played against Click. Cyan's just throwing out Fortnite lore every 5 seconds. Click's could care less, bro. Casual players care more about these characters, and they care more about buying Fortnite skins. Professional players or competitive players care more about consistency. They will use the same Fortnite skin over and over and over and over and over again, because it's one that they're used to. They're familiar with the hitboxes or the way this skin moves when they use it and all that. So it's a strange balance. And all I'm asking is that the player base give Epic Games a bit of grace and time to kind of adjust it, because you have to understand, at the end of the day, this is a business still. I know, and I agree with y'all, that the loot pools need to be split. The loot pools, they should be separated. And I think that there are some old features from Arena that should be moved over into ranked. I don't know why Siphon does not exist. Even in zero builds, I don't care if we have Overshield. I don't know why Siphon doesn't exist, and I'm getting 5th and 6th partied. I'm not going to be able to survive that, but I should be rewarded for getting kills. But that aside, I think there will be a time when Epic does realize that, hey, we are going to need to split these loot pools again. It's an experiment that they're trying now. Ranked has been out for about a year. We'll see what they do with it in the future. I think that's the big reason why Epic Games is not going to split the loot pools as of right now. They're trying to see how far they can take it. They're trying to see if they can make balances and adjustments. But the issue is, when you have seasons like this that are a bit more experimental with the loot pool in nature, it's very difficult to appease both sides. I think with how these weapons are right now, they found a good balance. The issue is now there's a discrepancy between how competitive is played and how casual playlists are played. And with that being the case, if it's not an accurate representation of how tournaments are going to be, the pros and the most competitive players, they need a place where they can practice, you know, playing in tournament style, and they're not getting that with this current loot pool. That's my soapbox. That's my rant. 25-minute recording. We'll see what Tanks does to edit this bad boy up. So Tanks, let's see what you do, bro. This is going to be the first video you edit on the channel. I'm curious, man. For anybody watching the recording of this, hopefully you come to a live stream sometime, man. Look at everybody in chat, spam some W's or something, all right? A lot of stuff that's been on my mind for the last few weeks. I haven't had the chance to really talk about it. So I love y'all. If you're watching the recording of this, subscribe to the channel. Use creator code Clark_Clint, all that good stuff. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one.